Just as like a brief intro, Rell, I did the bare minimum of research on your art career before this artist talk. And what I noticed is that you have currently shown at like a million art institutions over the past like couple of years. And I'm just gonna read them off right now. So like the Carnegie Museums, the Glass Center, the Brew House, the University of Pittsburgh Gallery, the Kelly Strayhorn, the Children's Museum, Boom Concepts, Assemble, and even way back at the Ace Hotel at that Glow Up show, which I also happen to be at. So that's a ton. That's a ton of stuff. So shout out to you for, I would say, working really hard over the past couple of years. So do you want to see if you can share your screen and talk us through it?
Yes. Let's see. Here we go. And I actually got it to do a slideshow, so we're all good. Okay, so I see the list of names of everyone who's in here. Thank you very much for attending. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with this image. So, you know, I am Rell. I am a Wilkinsburg artist, and for people who are not local, Wilkinsburg is in the Pittsburgh area. I primarily work in oil and acrylic painting and sometimes a bit of fiber art. I describe my work as a reflection of daily happenings, daydreams that I have, as well as being a response to beauty standards and the representation of Black people in global media. And much of my process involves like discussions with myself via internal monologue. And I view that as a really important way to learn and unlearn concepts and like social issues and things. So first, I'm just gonna take a brief moment to review some of my past work and just give you a little overview. So the first portion of like the expanse of my work is talking about like my communities or places that I've grown up. So this is an installation at the Braddock Carnegie Library that happened, I think, in 2018. And this was my first or second solo show called These Places I'm From. And this is canvas with broken windows from Wilkinsburg and other neighborhoods I've lived in, printed onto the canvas, which was used as wearable art in a fashion show at Carnegie Mellon University. In the background, you can see like a canvas that has a bird eye view of my block and the surrounding area where I currently live. And this show is really focused on not Wilkinsburg specifically, but like as a child, I grew up all over the East End in what is considered, you know, majority Black neighborhoods. And it's really, the show really was highlighting the way that seeing infrastructure crumble around you can really have an effect on your mental health and your state of happiness and your quality of life. This next piece was at the Brew House earlier this year. And this piece is Dye Hair Part 1. It's oil on canvas. This piece is specifically about an incident that I had with police officers showing up to the wrong address for a domestic violence call. They showed up to my house at 3 a.m. with guns drawn, and really just like a reflection of me thinking about, you know, my existence and just like through the time of my life, all of my engagements with police have been negative. Like from the time I was in 3rd grade to times where I was homeless and up until, I mean, now. Okay. So another portion of my work really focuses on beauty standards and resisting dominant beauty standards, Black hair culture, texturism. This piece is a self-portrait, and it's really focused on like mental health and how that sometimes impacts hygiene. But when it comes to Black hair and the history of discrimination against Black hair, it eliminates all possibility for Black people to be afforded grace because we're not allowed to, I guess, slip or not ever be presentable. And then in this series here, which is the texture series, I am thinking about texturism. I'm thinking about how we as a community sometimes reinforce beauty standards or standards of what's considered respectable and what's neat and clean, and questioning those ideals and really thinking about ways that we can just allow ourselves to be in our natural state. This is a piece that was in the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh. It's acrylic on canvas, and it also has my hair, my actual braids that I wore one summer. This is a piece that is acrylic and oil on 8x8 canvas with hair beads, elastics, and yarn. And this piece actually you can currently visit this piece at the Pittsburgh Glass Center up until May 22nd. Here's another series about beauty standards, and this was inspired by just all types of different noses that people have and me celebrating the beauty of our noses and our features. This is a series of miniature portraits of Black women that I've done in the past, where they're on like, maybe these are 3.5 inches by 2.5 inch canvas patches. There's an up close. This one is probably my favorite one. I think was the most successful. So this is a piece called Onward, and it is oil on canvas. This piece is 2 of my closest friends. And it really just is important to me because it always reminds me that, like, no matter where you're from, like what identity you have, like how many intersections you have in a marginalized identity, like all of our issues are tied together, and none of us can live safely or have freedom until like the person who is most marginalized is free. And also it's a celebration of me just having this community. I do see now really that it's a struggle for a lot of people to feel that like solidarity exists between people of color. And I do think of overall, it doesn't exist, but it does exist in your personal friendships. You can make friendships, you can have chosen family, and that is where you will find that solidarity and build that solidarity. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the current show at WCDC. So initially, the work from the show is supposed to be based on this painting here. This painting is reality. I made it in 2018. It's acrylic on canvas. One really important detail is that the origami paper cranes are Japanese culture. If you have time to look into the story of paper cranes and the tale that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, your wish or your dream will come true. So I encourage you to kind of Google it and look for it. this was really a representation of me just making the move to reach my goals, to dream of a better life, to actually care about things. This is when I really started picking up making artwork again after years of not making art, after I had unfortunately dropped out of university. And I never thought that I would be doing art again. But around this time, things were really picking up for me. I was really leaning into the Pittsburgh art scene. And I just felt really encouraged to like reach and chase after an actual future that I envisioned having when I was a kid. This next piece is reality. So of course you reach those goals, you reach those aspirations, and sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. Sometimes you go and get those degrees, or you do what your parents wanted you to do, or what your family wanted you to do. And then you realize maybe it wasn't for you all along. But then you can create something new. This piece was made this year. So this is one of the first new pieces for the WCDC show. I do a lot of self-portraits because you can look at my work and go back in time and really see where I am, whether it's mentally, whether you're looking at like my belief system. You can kind of see it reflected in my self-portraits at the time, how I'm feeling or where I was in my life. So if the first picture of Paper Cranes was about going after your dreams, and the second one was about reality, I think for me, this one was really me thinking about, even if something doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you still have to chase after that, because you'll always be bothered with the what ifs. You know, you'll never recover, from the what ifs. So this piece is really kind of a good way to finish that set of paintings, I think. So this is a piece that was in the University of Pittsburgh Art Gallery. This is a really important piece to me. And it's now at the WCDC exhibit, because I really thought that this is not only a strong piece, but it's really showing where I'm going forward with my work. Again, another self-portrait. A lot of my process is having conversations with myself about things. But not only that, it's a lot of trial and error. Like you see the double lines of the legs, the double eyes. Initially, those just started off as mistakes or things that were unresolved. And not only did it look nice, but it really made me think about myself and like the way that I see myself, the way that others see me, past and present and future, just like a lot of movement, and even progression, like not just in my art career, but myself as a person and the things that I believe and the goals that I'm reaching for. So it's a really important piece. And I think it's a really good indicator of where I am in life right now. And not only that, this was, I think, my first piece from maybe 2015 until now, where I really kind of flexed my skill when it comes to what I can do painting wise. And I still think that because at the end, I did start having deadlines to have this somewhere. that I could have even spent another month or two on it and done a lot more, but I'm really happy at where it ended up. And I'm really happy at the conclusion that I came to with this piece. And that is just the start of what I'll be doing in the future. And there's just a close-up so you can see the double eyes and the texture of the hair. And I don't know if I said this piece is called Head in the Stars. This is another piece that is at the WCDC exhibition. And initially, this piece started with a group of paintings that I did for a program with CDCP and Monmade. And the initial thought process was that all of these paintings would be based on those initial paintings of hands reaching up for paper cranes. And what happened with this piece was there were going to be more paintings of people reaching up for balloons or letting go of balloons as if they were letting go of dreams or letting go of goals. And initially, this hand held the end of a balloon string. But for a while, I sat and thought about this piece and thought about how it just didn't sit right with me. I don't know what it was that was weird. Like, I don't think I can actually describe what was weird about it to me. I do think the initial painting was successful, but something about it also just made me itch. So I decided for this show that I would change it. And I changed it into, you know, a hand holding flowers, something that's unresolved because my feelings about it are still very unresolved. And it's really just a reflection of, you know, sometimes you make mistakes and you can see the progression of my thoughts and the way I live and the way I exist in the world through my paintings. And this one is pretty much just like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to change your mind. And in that sort of way that, like, as a person, I'm still in bloom. Like, I'm still progressing. I'm still figuring things out. So this is one of two digital versions of the Collective Dream series. So there is one that is exhibited at the WCDC that's an actual painting on a canvas board and it's framed, but I don't have like a great photo of that one, but it is the same piece of work. It just has a different background and maybe a few more paper cranes sketched out in the background. But this is Collective Dream, and this is really thinking about all of the things that I've learned through the process of painting and all of the things that I've thought about within my discussions with myself in my, you know, internal monologue about collectivism, about like chosen community, about the importance of friendship and the importance of having community that exists outside of just the way I identify, and understanding one another and reaching for goals and reaching for freedom in a way that is accessible for all of us or includes all of us. And this is the green version of that print. These two prints do exist at the WCDC exhibition. They're beautifully framed, thanks to the help of Dave. Okay, so this is my favorite piece at the exhibition right now. This piece is imagery of 3 people that I know and love. And when I talk about dreams and like goals, what I'm striving towards, like really, I think my dreams are simple. Like, I just want the people that I love to be safe. I want us to have houses. I want us to exist without violence. Um, I want the trans people in my life to be safe, like the Black women in my life to be safe, the Asian women in my life to be safe. Um, I want us to be able to afford to exist and afford to live life and not just be slaving away at 9-to-5 jobs. Um, I mean, it's really basic things that are necessities, but at this point in history, we're finding it to be very hard. But yeah, even in my dreams and my thoughts about what the future is, I'm always thinking about my very close circle of friends, like my chosen community and my found family. And I'll just show you some close-ups of this. Oops. Here we go. On the right side, there is the ears of a Frenchie. That's my nephew. Okay, so going forward, talking about the future and how my work at the Wilkinsburg exhibition relates to everything else that I'm doing. So this piece was just in New York at the Wilmer Jennings Gallery at Kinkillaba. It's in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. This piece is really a play on that first piece with the set of double eyes. And I'm really thinking about, of course, existence, because, you know, we're all struggling to afford to exist. We're all mentally struggling. But when I think about like Black people, we're not afforded existence. We're not afforded escapism. I have an acquaintance who is a writer. Her name is Stitch. She writes for like Teen Vogue and does writing on kind of like fandom studies. And she's the one who really got me thinking about that. Like, as Black people, we encounter anti-Blackness everywhere. Like daily life, we encounter anti-Blackness in fandom, no matter what fandom it is, from sports to Star Trek to K-pop to basket weaving. Like all of these random hobbies and communities, we experience anti-Blackness, and sometimes it's overbearing and it feels like there's no escape. And maybe that's why I'm always so focused on dreams and thinking about the past and present. Like, this is thinking about the past and present. It's a current me and the past me leaning on myself and being the person that I needed when I was younger. And then the double eyes for me really represents looking forward to the future. But in thinking about the future, it's almost like I'm striving to imagine a way where I, as a Black woman, don't suffer from anti-Blackness. Like, what am I escaping? Like, how do I escape? And really thinking about it, it's so hard to even explain, because the idea of escapism is just not, it doesn't seem possible to me, because no matter what I look to or look towards or participate in to get my mind off of reality, I still encounter anti-Blackness. But the thing is that now, me as a 34-year-old, I think I've worked through a lot of issues regarding that, and I've not let that stop me. And I think I'm shaping myself to be more like the person that I imagined myself being when I was a little kid. And so for the last slide, I am showing you the piece that is going to be at the Carnegie Museum of Art in the Women of Visions, Future Visions exhibition. This is not the finished work, but it's just a preview, a little snippet. And that show will start May 28th. It opens May 28th. It closes June 12th. So I'm hoping that if you are local to the Pittsburgh area, Wilkinsburg, you can stop by the WCDC after having seen this piece of work at the Carnegie Museum exhibition. And this piece still ties into everything that is happening right now at the WCDC exhibition and all of the work that I've done so far. I really think about how I had a painting professor when I started attending CCAC in like 2016, who told us to be a citizen of the world, right? And this piece has multiple levels because I'm always thinking about, I don't consider myself an activist. I don't consider my art activist art. Like, I don't consider simply making this as activism or as making a change. It's literally just me thinking about things and working through all of my thoughts. But also, I think I've come to the conclusion that as a person, I would like to do as little harm as possible to other people, and especially with people within my community and people in my found community, you know, those people who have different intersections than I do, those people who come from different walks of life than I do, right? And even recognizing that just because like I'm a Black woman doesn't mean that there aren't people that I don't have a little bit of privilege over, whether that be people who are disabled or people who are in the LGBTQIA community, people who are immigrants, people who don't speak English as a first language. There are like many ways in which I exist that give me just a little bit of privilege over other people within my found community and within the, you know, country and the world. I don't know. So this piece is really about not just myself. This is a portrait of my younger self. And on the right, you see a sketch of where my current or future self will be. This is really reflective of me thinking about all of that. And even like a double consciousness of how I exist as a Black person and an American. I'm oppressed here, but when I go somewhere else, I might have passport privilege. There was an incident that happened, I think, last summer, where two women went to Indonesia. And, you know, they were Black women, they were lesbians, and they felt like they could breathe because they escaped America. But also they were kind of telling other people how to come to that country during COVID, and lots of people got upset, rightfully. But also on the opposite end, lots of people were being very racist about it. So there's that thing again where like anti-Blackness is so pervasive that it just seeps into everything, that even, you know, if I do something wrong, a lot of people will not feel the need to reprimand me without being anti-Black in their correction of me. So it's really a thought of like, where do I go to escape? You know, if I also have a privilege of being American, I can't just simply go to another place to exist without having a passport privilege. I can't escape in books and literature and sports and fandom, in niche hobbies like basket weaving, whatever it is, I will encounter that anti-Blackness. But also, I'm imagining a future where essentially, like, I don't have to suffer. Sorry, this is getting so involved and so hard to explain, but it's really like my thought process about this work and a lot of my future work is, you know, how do I exist? How do I exist doing as little harm as possible? How do I help make a future for myself and my friends to exist without harm coming to us? And most of all, how do I become the person that I thought I would be when I was a child? Like, when you're a child and you imagine that you're going to be a pop star, or you're going to be able to take care of your family, or whatever it is, like, how do I become that person, and how do I become the person that they needed? Okay, so I think that's the end of me talking about all of my work. I'm going to stop sharing, and I don't know how long we were supposed to go, but I guess we do have time for questions.
Yeah, there's no set rules. I just want to briefly thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself. I think it's really interesting how much of yourself that you put into the work, and then also being able to talk about it pretty eloquently isn't always easy, right? And I did have like a couple of questions I was going to ask, and you kind of like touched on all of them. Specifically, like you referenced your work being like a product of a lot of your daydreaming, and it seems like you're putting in a lot of work on yourself, and that's coming out in your artwork, and specifically about like imagining a place or a person that you'd want to be in the future, like setting goals for yourself. Like, I mean, whenever we looked at those origami pieces, I think would not have connected the dots that you were actually sharing images of like things that you wanted for yourself or for your community, like in the future. So I just think that kind of stuff is like really, really, really interesting. And as well as that ties into, I was going to ask you about like, there's a lot of self-portraits here. And you had pointed out to me actually all of the doubling that was going on. And you brought up the idea of a double consciousness. And also how that ties into the idea that like, I think it's sometimes hard to talk about being like a work in progress and how like mistakes are like, okay. And so to be able, one of my favorite things is turning like a negative into a positive. So to be able to like acknowledge like, okay, I was doing this is a mistake, and now I'm actually going to make it maybe like an intentional choice into this work, whether it's you as a person or like something that you're painting. I just think that that's really, really interesting and adds a lot more to the images than just it like, looking nice, like aesthetically and things like that. But it also does look nice and cool and kind of freaky.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really, really liked it. I mean, we have time. If anybody has a question in the chat, we had a couple more people come in the middle of the talk. So thank you everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. If anybody has a question they would love to ask Rell, just you can throw it in the chat.
Thank you for your comments. I am looking at them.
You got a lot. You got a lot of love, I think, in the comments.
Hi, Krista.
Hi, Rell.
Krista has been one of my mentors.
Thanks for joining us.
I just I wanted to make a comment. You said a few times that about regret, or not wanting to be regretful of making mistakes or whatever. And I've just read recently some research about most people regret the things they don't do rather than their mistakes. So I found that really interesting. You probably regret not doing something as opposed to trying something and it not working out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. there was a whole period of when I was not making art that it was like, definitely that. Like, I initially went to school for fashion design and decided that I did not want to do that or be a part of that industry or community. But that's the reason why I started painting again, because it was kind of nagging me. Like, I have all these ideas, I want to put them down, and the regret of not doing it. Like, every time I didn't do something, like you said, it would be a regret. So
when did that happen? Like, how long ago did that choice get made?
I came back to Pittsburgh in 2009, and then I think my very first show may have been 2015 or 2016. Yeah.
So a while, like a good
chunk
of time went by.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If anybody else has any questions, like I said, feel free to shout them out. I also wanted to ask, you said that, I mean, this is like a Wilkinsburg-centric show. You said that you grew up in a place with like crumbling infrastructure, and like, did you live in the East End? You grew up there? Like,
I've been in Wilkinsburg since I was, so since like, when did I graduate from Rogers? Since 2001, actually.
Okay.
But the thing was, my parents didn't want me going to Wilkinsburg schools. So, because at the time my dad had worked for Wilkinsburg schools, and it was just like, I don't think that's the best option. So then I was sent to live with my grandma so I could continue going to Kappa and Rogers, because I was already enrolled in Rogers when we moved to Wilkinsburg. And they were just like, yeah, the school doesn't seem like the best option, so just like live with your grandma. So then I was living in East Liberty. And then up until I went to Rogers, so Rogers is like, I started 6th grade, but from like kindergarten through 5th grade, I probably went to like 11 schools, because my mom was a single mom and she was moving around a lot. And so I lived all over the East End. Like, I lived in Greenfield. I lived in, like, my great grandma owned 2 houses in Homewood, East Liberty, Larmer. I went to church over there. There was one period of time where I was homeless, and my mom stayed with my grandma and I stayed with my cousins in like they're like the projects in Garfield. Like, they're now like redone, so they look different, but they're kind of right behind Penn Avenue, or maybe it's like Garfield Commons or something like that. So I just like lived all over, and I really lived in these places before they started being gentrified. So everything was crumbling, everything was a mess. And it really takes a toll on you, you know? Like, sometimes, like, I get the functionality of having certain things like bike lanes, because people do need to be safe while commuting. But also I'm just like, the sidewalk is crumbling and I have to step off the sidewalk into a bike lane, you know? So it's just like, sometimes it makes no sense to your normal average person who has no idea what is going on at the like city or borough's planning level, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a lived experience there that maybe they haven't been exposed to or had in general. I think that's an interesting comment, specifically about the bike lanes and the crumbling sidewalk, especially as it relates to you talking about your own privilege as like a Black woman, but also maybe having your own types of privilege, and like depends on where you come into it. So like, yeah, bike lanes are great, accessibility, cheap way to get to work.
Right, exactly, because I'm walking in the back bike lane, but what about a person who has a wheelchair?
Yeah.
Or has a mobility aid, like, you know?
Yeah, and like, on top of everything else that maybe you could work on. You know, it just it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
I do have a question. How, what is this? You mentioned 2 other artists. Is it a series that's going to continue, or how did this come about?
Oh, your question's for me?
Yeah.
Krista, well, amazing. We'll give Rell a break for a second. We have 4 shows scheduled in collaboration with the WCDC, and this is actually the 4th one. So there's been 3 previous ones. One of our previous artists, Randy, is actually in this video call right now. Shout out Randy. His was the last show. I mentioned it briefly at the top, but the first one was Kelly Malone, who does like Workshop Pittsburgh, and she did a punch needle show. And I knew what punch needle was, but I didn't have like a language for it. I just thought it was like yarn. So I learned about that watching her. She did a bunch of all local Wilkinsburg locations that she just liked. So one of them, I think one of my favorites was like the mural of like the guys doing like judo. And she did like her friends' houses. She did the KFC, like a bunch of spots. And so she just made those up special for the show. The second one was an artist named Senta Schumacher, who used to run a gallery called Phosphor Gallery. She did all photography. And the third one was Randy, Wilkinsburg resident, and it was his first art show. He's been very nice to work with him. And he also did some edited photography. And then Rell is our last one. But we do have plans to continue this project into the future. So if you check back to the WCDC website, my employer is Casey Droki Cultural Productions. There's like a Facebook page, there's an Instagram, all that stuff that you can imagine. Whatever we're working on will be all in there. And the guts of the shows are basically to, highlight and celebrate just local Wilkinsburg artists. So it'll continue in that vein. So yeah, I really thank you for that question. I really appreciate it.
And then follow up to that, Rell, sounds like you have several things going on, just pieces in different shows. How are you approaching these? Are they networking that you're doing, or are you applying?
So in 2020, I lost, they eliminated all of our positions at CMU.
Oh no.
But, that gave me a break. That gave me, honestly, it's probably the best thing that's happened. Yeah, it gave me like a year break, but at that time, not only was I applying to jobs, but I really was thinking about all of the art things that I could do while I was unemployed, and hoping that when 2021 came around, COVID would not be a thing anymore. So I started applying to a lot of things, thinking there's no way I'm going to get any of all of these things. Maybe I'll get 2 out of 20. But then I got 18 out of 20. It just happened later than I expected. So that's why we're seeing me participating in 10 shows over the course of 8 months is because of that. I will say that so networking has been a thing, but mostly it's from 2 specific places. So the Casey Drogi, and then also the Women of Visions cohort that I'm a part of. And Krista, I don't know if you know about Women of Visions. They are now it's a Pittsburgh cohort of Black women artists, and now they're the longest running cohort of Black women artists in the country. So it's been a huge deal, and now I believe they're being archived by the University of Pittsburgh, and we worked with Janet at the Pitt UAG, and it was a great show. And just I've been having people reach out to me because of those things. And then I think with Casey, we've worked on maybe 3 or 4 different things at this point. Yeah, so it's really just between me doing 1 or 2 projects, and then the same people giving me access to other things, and also people saying nice things about me behind my back. Not really behind my back, but when I'm not there, like people saying nice things about me.
That always feels good. We've got, I'll make it our last question. We've got Naomi Chambers in the chat, and she says, Rell, I love your new work. What new Pittsburgh or Wilkinsburg themes are you looking forward to exploring in painting or in textiles?
So I'm really looking forward in painting. So in the past, I've been trying to join like the textiles and the painting together, which you see in some of those paintings where there's yarn involved. But I'm really looking forward to focusing on myself in art. There's going to be a lot more self-portraits, which is kind of like, meh, but I think when I talk about them, people realize the theme about like being the person that you needed as a child. So I'm really trying to explore more into that, maybe not so much Pittsburgh, Wilkinsburg based. I think in the past, especially when I get like rejection letters, like people are like, oh, thanks for applying to our residency. We love your commitment to community. And I'm like, or like your activism. I'm like, I'm not an activist. My art is not about activism. It's like, I just experience these things literally as a Black woman. Like, this is how it exists. And yes, it's a larger issue, but I'm focusing on like my personal experience with the issue and my thought process. So I'm really trying to focus on like really specific things about me and what I'm feeling, more so than like overarching themes, I guess. And in textiles, Naomi and I have spoken before about me wanting to get into soft sculpture, because fashion is where I started. I've done a few fashion shows where it's just very experimental, seeing what sticks. Once I've tried to make inflatable clothing out of like a bunch of vinyl letters, but I couldn't get them to stay inflated for the whole show. So I ended up stuffing them with denim fibers or something. But I want to get into more of that, like figuring out some soft sculpture things, figuring out how to make my work more three-dimensional, or even doing like installations. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great question, Naomi. Very, very briefly, what you're saying about inflatable clothing really reminds me of like a Missy Elliott video. I don't know if you check that out, like an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Classic. Well, all right, everybody, we're just about at time. So I want to once again thank Rell for joining us and talking all about your work, talking us through your process. It's not always easy to do, and I think you did a really, really great job just kind of explaining where you're coming from and like the why and all of it. Krista, looking forward to seeing your new adventures and art. Yeah, well, I think we all are. And can you briefly tell us about the upcoming show at the Carnegie and like what the dates were again? Okay, so the show at the Carnegie is 2 weeks long. It's called Future Visions. It's Women of Visions group show. The opening date is May 28th. The closing date is June 12th, but there's going to be a free event happening in the Hall of Sculpture on June 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. If you can make that, that's a free way to see the show, kind of, you know, talk to us and see us all with our work. I think I'm actually doing an artist talk about that specific piece with 2 other women in the group on May 28th as well. And then the other thing is my fiber work is still at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, and that show ends May 22nd. Yeah. Okay, so a lot to look forward to. Thank you everybody for joining us. It was a lot of fun doing this all together. So I really appreciate everybody's time. And with that, I'm going to press the stop record button. So we're all,
Thank you, Kiki.
we're all off the hook.
Bye.